So now I have the great pleasure of introducing our next speaker, Abbey Palmer. Abbey is a doctoral candidate in the Department of Education at the University of Oxford, and she works in collaboration with the Department of Engineering. And she'll be speaking to us today about a collaborative project that she's undertaking with the X-Reality Hub and in Oxfordshire schools. Over to you, Abbey.
So as Leah said, I'm Abbey Palmer. I'm a first-year DPhil student in the Department of Education. And today I just wanted to talk to you about a feasibility study that we recently conducted exploring the use of virtual reality to teach children in care literature. So the study was in collaboration between the University of Oxford's X-Reality Hub, which works with immersive technologies as far as research, innovation, and development, the Oxfordshire County Council, which oversees the state schools within the county, and the Oxfordshire Virtual School, which is part of the county council in the county and works to raise their achievement by providing them with the educational supports that they may be missing. So just a quick background, child in care is one who's either subject to a care order granted by a court or who has been under a local authority's care for more than 24 hours. Any fellow Americans out there would know this as foster care. And on the 31st of March of 2020, there were over 80,000 children in care in the UK, which is a 2% increase from the previous year of 2019. Children in care tend to have lower academic attainment than their peers starting at a young age, which is a gap that just school years. And this is because they're often faced with many factors shown to have an impact on their educational success, such as instability in their homes and educational environments, lack of continuity of care, social and emotional, mental health difficulties, etc. So the lockdown conditions imposed as a response to the pandemic have only served to widen the education gap between privileged and deprived students in the UK. And there was a survey conducted of teachers recently that reported that 43% of secondary school teachers in deprived areas said their pupils studied for less than an hour a day under lockdown, which compares to just 4% of private school teachers and 14% in state schools in more affluent areas. Further, online learning just assumes that some devices are available to children along with appropriate supervision, but 700,000 pupils in the UK lack access to devices and supervision for appropriate online learning. So why did we choose virtual reality? Well, almost 90% of adults in the UK own a smartphone, making smartphones one of the most viable options for students to access educational technology. Further, the VR technology has educational content as it allows learners to experience an immersive interactive environment, to visualize and reify presented material, to learn in contexts that might be difficult or impossible in real life, like going to the moon or exploring, ancient archaeological ruins. It enhances motivation, eliminates distractions, and it's able to be adapted to individual learners' needs. Additionally, with advances in technology, the availability of low-cost VR headsets, which utilize smartphones with VR-compatible apps such as Google Cardboard, make leveraging this technology for educational purposes an even more cost-effective and convenient option. So as this was a feasibility study, our question was quite simple. Basically, can we, right? So we set out to investigate whether or not VR could help improve learning outcomes in literature for children in care. So when we started this project, we didn't know what subject we would be looking at. So we consulted with the virtual school and they told us that they saw the largest gaps in English language and literature, particularly starting around year 8. So it's like 13 years old, and then widening as students got older, as they didn't have the cultural capital needed to understand and connect with what they were reading. So as none of the research team had experience teaching language and literature, we consulted with the teachers at the virtual school, and they helped in identifying appropriate literature and realistic assessments. So eventually we settled on an excerpt from Charles Dickens Oliver Twist, which is commonly taught in UK secondary schools. As far as the development of the app, there was a very tight time frame from concept to deployment. So we had approximately 3 weeks total. And so this meant that we'd only be able to include static scenes, as the time frame didn't allow for us to do any sort of animation, which is quite time consuming. So we chose Google Cardboard for the hardware, as it can retail for less than 10 pounds and you only need a cell phone, not a bunch of specialist hardware. However, as Cardboard is quite basic as far as head-mounted displays are concerned, this meant that the students would interact with the virtual environment through gazing. So the items in a scene that could be interacted with would be highlighted, and they'd simply stare at them to interact. So for those who are not familiar with Google Cardboard, this is a Google Cardboard. It's literally cardboard that comes with instructions on how to fold it into a head-mounted display. Okay, all right. So the purpose was to give them both a visual representation of the extract that they were going to read, and also some cultural capital to connect with it better and understand it better. So we decided to have 2 scenes within the app, one that would depict a street scene to show what Victorian London was generally like, and then another to basically show to more specifically the extract. So we identified items that could be used to give cultural and historical context in the street scene. And then in the workhouse scene, we had we identified vocabulary words from the excerpt that could be visually depicted within the scene for context and clarity. And then to appeal more to the students, we added a little bit of gamification, including a storyline that cast them as book jumpers, with a magical ability to jump into books and interact with the stories. But since they were young, they were still learning and not quite in control of their powers. So sometimes they didn't know which book they jumped into. So they needed the guide, who was our narrator, to help them figure out which book they were in. So basically, they had to interact with the items in each scene to give them information together, the location and the book. And then since they had to interact with all of the items in the scene before being able to progress to the next scene, there was a tally at the bottom of the screen that let them know how many items were remaining in each scene. And so this is a little bit of the...
By wearing these glasses, you've been given the supernatural power to teleport into books, interacting with the world inside.
So I'll skip a little bit forward so you can see kind of, so then they would interact with, they would get the green dot and circle.
It looks as if the Industrial Revolution is in full swing. So much soot, it's made the air smoggy and dirty. This was a time of great change for the...
And then inside, they would go inside the workhouse, and then they had this scene inside.
Small, shallow wooden bowl. They've obviously just had a meal, and this bowl has been scraped clean. Judging by the size of this bowl, they were probably served short commons, which means not enough food. I'm so hungry. Mattia.
So that's kind of the experience that they had in the app. As far as our participants, they were all students who were enrolled in the Oxfordshire Virtual School. We had 41 participants who were all in years 8 to 11, so about ages 13 to about 16, at state schools in Oxfordshire, and they were also in care within Oxfordshire. So we had 25 students identified as male, 16 as female, 12 year 8, 19 year 9, 7 year 10, 3 year 11s. This was a single blind repeated measures design. Participants were given a randomly generated 4-digit ID, which was distributed by the virtual school, but which was not known to the researchers, which was used to log into the VR app and then track their assessments. So students were given an online assessment prior to using the app, which was aimed at gauging their reading comprehension and their existing cultural capital relating to the Victorian era. And then a week and a half to 2 weeks later, they used the app and then took another assessment after using the app. And all of this took place in their homes because of COVID restrictions. So the assessments consisted of 2 parts. The first part asked the students to read the Oliver Twist excerpt and answer 9 questions regarding it. And the second part asked students to look at a picture of Victorian London and answer 5 questions. They had both multiple choice and open-ended questions, some of which had defined answers and some of which were free text. So for example, a question would ask, where does this take place, which would have a defined answer, followed by a question that would ask, why do you think that? Asking them to basically explain the reason for their answer. So the open-ended questions in part 1 required both reading comprehension and cultural capital, while the open-ended questions in part 2 relied heavily on cultural capital, and they weren't scaffolded by the excerpts. And though there were 14 questions, they were only scored on 8 of them. Basically, the why do you think that questions weren't included in the scoring. They were just there for us to basically ascertain why the students, answered the way that they did. So following completion of the post-test, the participants were asked to provide qualitative feedback regarding their experience using the app. The results. So the descriptive statistics showed that the mean score for the group increased 0.71 points from pre to post test. Again, this is out of 8 possible points total. But then breaking that down a bit and looking at individual scores, we see 63.41% of the 41 participants improved their assessment scores on the post test with an average increase of 1.39 out of a possible 8 points. So we had 12.2% that decreased their scores and then 24.39 that showed no change. However, it's worth noting that of those 24-ish percent, 30% had scored a perfect score of 8 points. Okay, let's hope we're almost done. So just hang in there a little bit, Zoom. So we took, we took the free text answers. The free text answers that weren't included in the scoring were compiled into word clouds. Hold on, sorry, I missed my, but yeah, that's not important. We'll go to the next one. So for the word clouds, for the free text answers relating to the excerpt, we saw that the words became more focused and on the post test, and they demonstrated less variety. And we also saw that there was a higher frequency of words directly related to the excerpt or specifically mentioned in the VR app, like workhouse or gruel, hungry, eating, and industrial revolution. For the answers relating to the picture of the Victorian street, they showed the opposite. So they were more descriptive answers on the post-test, and they had a wider variety of words. They also showed a higher frequency of words specifically mentioned in the app, like poverty, pollution, carriages, Victorian, and again, industrial revolution. So for the qualitative feedback, we sought that in order to basically get a sense of the students' previous experiences with VR, as well as their thoughts on their experience with our app. The questions about their app experience were answered on a 5-point Likert scale ranging from strongly agree to strongly disagree. The median rank that the students gave for their understanding of the excerpt and their ability to visualize the setting of the excerpt increased after using the app. However, it wasn't statistically significantly so. There was, however, a significant increase in the mean ranking for the students' confidence in their answers regarding both the excerpt and the picture after using the app. I skipped a slide here, sorry. Further in the qualitative feedback, it showed that the majority of the participants either felt neutral or actually really enjoyed using the app. They felt that VR apps could be useful for using literature in the future, and that they'd like to use it more. And also, the vast majority would like to use VR apps for learning other academic subjects like maths and science. So basically, in summary, though this was a feasibility study, VR shows promise as an educational tool for learning literature. Not only did the students enjoy using it, but most of them significantly improved their test scores after using it. And they expressed they felt more confident in their answers after using the VR app, which was reflected in their writing. I said the answers regarding the excerpt became more focused as they had more context and cultural capital on the post-test. And they were able to identify more specific things that led them to answer as they did. Basically, they weren't kind of grasping at straws, kind of trying to figure out why they may have something that may have given them an idea that, you know, made them give the answer that they did. And then their answers regarding the photo became more descriptive as they had more cultural capital to identify things in the photo that led them to answer as they did. So yeah, we're currently in the process of developing the app further and have a second phase in the works, testing it with control groups in real world classrooms that will probably take place this autumn. And yeah, we're hoping that that will bring even more promising results.